Does Batman have a female villain problem? Bruce Timm seems to think so. I think he might have missed an opportunity. Thanks for watching DC Chronicle, everyone. If you've got thoughts about this, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, if you've seen Batman Caped Crusader, the new animated series on Amazon Prime, you will have noticed that Penguin has had their gender changed and Oswald is now Oswalder and is now a female. Now, when asked why they did this, Bruce Timm did say it was because Batman didn't have enough good female villains, and so they had to change the gender of one in order to have good female villains. Here's the full quote. James and I were talking about the overview of the show, and we said one of the problems with Batman, as he is there's a lack of good villains. I mean, really? You've got Catwoman, you've got Poison Ivy, you've got Harley Quinn. But it would be really good to have more female villains, and off the top of my head I said, what if we gender flip the Penguin? That in turn sparked Tucker, who spearheaded Caped Crusader's 1940s style character designs, into action. Now, reading into this quote, I do think there's three things we can probably unpack from this, and these are three things that I'd like to go through. So, first of all, I think we should probably comment on just changing the character's gender or ethnicity or orientation, just generally because it is a bit of a controversial topic in comics right now and in comic book adaptations. Secondly, does Batman really have a female villain problem? And thirdly, has Bruce Timm potentially missed an opportunity to do something different here? So for the first topic, I mean, overall, I'm all right with characters having their gender changed, their ethnicity changed, their race changed, or their sexual orientation changed. I know some people are very precious about certain characters and don't want to see them changed. But for me, these are fictional characters. You know, they can be whoever you want them to be. So if in your story, Penguin is a female, then cool. Penguin can be a female. I do prefer it though if the change does serve the story in some respects. So with this and the Penguin specifically, I think it's okay because there's a subplot. I'm not going to go into plot details, but there is a subplot regarding the Penguin's children and her relationship with her children. And I do think that little plot line does work better from the perspective of a mother and maternal role rather than a father and a paternal role. So there I do understand it. If you are changing it just to change it, or you're just doing it for tokenism, I don't think it works very well. I think there's a few examples of where that's come back to bite people. But overall, I'm 100% okay with villains and heroes getting their gender changed, getting their race or sexual orientation changed. Again, they're fictional characters and they can be whoever you want them to be. Now, the second point, does Batman have a lack of good female villains? I mean, in the actual quote, he says that Batman has a problem with a lack of villains, which is absolutely ludicrous. Like, Batman has the best rogues gallery of all time, so there being a villain issue really isn't a thing. Does Batman have a female villain issue? I'd argue probably not. Like, I know he says outside of Catwoman, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I think the issue with them is they're so big now and they're not even really villains. I think if you were to get somebody on the street and ask to name a female villain though, they would probably say one of those three. They're so iconic. They're such an iconic part of comic books generally and Batman. I can see where you would have a bit of a struggle looking outside of that. But there are other female Batman villains. I mean, just off the top of the head, there's Talia al Ghul and her sister Nyssa al Ghul, who are very high-profile Batman villains. Lady Shiva as well is another Batman villain. And if you were a fan of the Arkham games, I know in Arkham Origins there was also Copperhead, who was female in that, and I think Copperhead is either or. There's male and female adaptations of Copperhead. So there's another four just off the bat that you could really do something with. But I do think there is a big shadow that Harley Quinn, Catwoman and Poison Ivy do cast over the rest of them, and I do see that point. The issue now being that they're not really villains. It's a bit like if you're a fan of WWE and someone is a heel, but they're a really good heel and you start cheering them. I think that's what happened to those three characters. They ended up being really good bad guys. And so everyone started rooting for them and started liking them. And so eventually you have no choice but to turn them at least indifferent, or at least an anti-hero, if not a full-blown hero. So I understand. outside of those big three, you might potentially feel like there's an issue. Really, though, in the context of Caped Crusader, this is an early years show. Everyone's kind of in their early iterations. I don't think with this one you would have a problem showing. I mean, Harley Quinn does have quite a prominent villain role in the show. Catwoman is kind of, doing the Catwoman thing of walking the line. So I think in the context of Batman the Caped Crusader, you would be okay having these three as out-and-out villains if you really did want female villains. I mean, outside of that, there are other options. But again, I'm not averse to changing genders if you did want to change gender of a different character, like the Penguin. And then the last point where I think Bruce Timm has missed an opportunity, and this would be my challenge to someone like Bruce Timm, if they have an opinion like this. Okay, so you think Batman doesn't have strong female villains outside of the big three? Well, you just made an animated Batman show that was on Amazon Prime, had millions of people watching it. It had huge marketing. I do think it was, near the top of the most watched TV shows when it first came out. If you don't think that there's a strong enough female villain to put in there, why don't you create one? Or boost the profile of a lower profile one? I think this point is particularly interesting because Batman the Animated Series, which Bruce Timm was heavily involved in, created Harley Quinn, one of the most iconic female villains of all time, was created in that show. So Bruce Timm has shown he can do it. Like he's shown he knows how to create a good female villain. I would wonder if, on the side of things, I don't have any good female villains, I'm going to change the gender of a male one. Would it not have been better to have created one or boosted the profile of a lower one? So it's not exactly the same, but one example I would maybe give is Peacemaker. So 4 or 5 years ago, nobody knew who Peacemaker was, and now he's everywhere. I was walking past the shop and I saw a Peacemaker rubber duck. That's how everywhere Peacemaker is. So I think you could definitely do the same thing with a female villain, create a new one, or give a big spotlight to a lower profile one. And really what you could have done there is you could have used this show to create a star, create a new comic book character who could have gone on to have further adaptation. And it's a great way to kind of put a stamp on the Batman mythos like Bruce Timm did with the creation of Harley Quinn. So again, nothing against changing the gender of Penguin, nothing against changing the gender of anyone. I just think I would have liked Bruce Timm to have rose to that challenge and created somebody new or lifted somebody else up. So to summarize this video, I have no problem with races, genders, sexuality being changed at all with characters. If you want a black Superman is a fictional character from another planet. He can have bright blue skin if you want him to have bright blue skin. So I'm not against that at all, as long as I do think it should kind of serve the story in some way, though. I don't particularly think Batman has a female villain problem, but I can see the reasoning behind Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman overshadowing the other female villains and making the other female villains not so high profile. But then if you're a creator and you have this huge platform, then surely you would like the challenge, or you would accept the challenge of creating a new villain or raising the profile of a lower tier villain. So I hope you all liked that video. If you agree, disagree, got any opinions about it, drop them down below. Please like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.